So Eskom has urged South Africans to use power sparingly over the coming days, especially between 5 and 9 p.m. to avoid higher stages of outages. It comes as the country is in the grips of a second day of stage 6 power cuts. For more on this, let's speak to energy expert Matthew Cruiser, who's head of business intelligence and public relations at Home Energy, which is a tech startup. Good to speak to you, Matthew. Grateful for your time. So in the simplest terms, explain what is going on here, because for many people it feels as though we take one step forward and 2 steps back on the power front.
Yes, very much so. Well, to explain the direct cause for the stage 6 load shedding, we heard from Eskom that power units at Duva, Grootvlei, Kendal and Matla power stations have come offline, and there's also been delays of getting units back online that have been on maintenance at Hendrina, Kendal, Matla and Matimba. So that's the direct cause. But the underlying cause is actually that these power stations are very old now. They're aged coal power fleets, and the average age of the coal power stations now are 42 years old, which is already 2 years past their design life of 40 years. And we have 5 that are nearing 55 years, and at 55 years they need to be taken offline because they're just basically unfunctional. So we have this aging infrastructure on the coal fleet, which is 80% of our generation in the whole of South Africa, and it's aging, and there's not really that much coming back to replace it for evening peak demand. There's a lot of solar farms and wind farms, but that doesn't really provide the peak demand that happens in the evenings. So I see actually load shedding increasing going forward and doubling over the next 5 years in my projections. Interesting that you say that, because in governments, or via government's projections, at least they expect that in fact there'll be an improvement within the next year. At some point they were talking about an 18-month to 24-month window where we would see an improvement, but you say it's going to worsen. Why is that? Yes, well, fortunately on this one, time will tell, and I've heard a lot of projections from one camp saying that load shedding will be a thing of the past in 2024 in December. But then there's another camp, and this is the kind of the energy experts, myself, Chris Yearland, that highlight that load shedding will be here for the next 5 years. And, you know, the camp that talks to that load shedding is going to go away, I see they're doing a bit of a PR exercise, because I personally heard for myself last year in July, President Cyril Ramaphosa saying that load shedding will be a thing of the past in a year and a half. And I also remember him saying that in 2015 and in 2019. So I don't really believe it when I hear that. I'd like to see it. And unfortunately, what we're actually seeing is stage 6 once again right now. How effective then is the intervention of stage 6 power cuts in terms of managing the situation? Because a line from the statement today said the reduction will continue to assist in alleviating pressure on the system, but does it go far enough? Yeah, so that line comes from the increased planned maintenance that almost always happens in spring. And usually you'd do your maintenance in spring and summer, preparing for winter when the peak demand happens. And then you have a whole bunch of coal units coming back online in winter. And we had fortunately reduced demand in winter, paired with about 4,400 megawatts of solar installed on a small scale on rooftops. So, you know, that commentary comes in that we've increased our planned maintenance from 3,000 megawatts in July to 5,000 megawatts now. So there's like 2 stages of load shedding there, increased as a result of actually taking units off to do maintenance, which we should do. But in my, humble opinion, doing maintenance is business as usual at Eskom. I was there for 11 years, and we should have planned maintenance going up to 8,000 megawatts all the time. We just happen to be having a philosophy where we wait for units to break, then take them offline, try and fix them and bring them back. So that's why we're having 16,000 megawatts plus of our outages being unplanned outages, when basically a coal power station unit broke down and now it's taken offline. You were at Eskom, you say, for 11 years. I wonder from your assessment if this is a better company than the one that you worked for, just in terms of its management of this crisis and its ability to plan for the future. So unfortunately, I would not say that. Unfortunately, I would say that the Eskom that I entered in 2010 was a better Eskom than the Eskom we see now. And we can see that purely on the energy availability factor of the coal power stations being at about 85% when I entered Eskom. And it's now sitting below 50%. So it's come to a place where it's been mismanaged, and we can go into all the details of like why it's in its current state. But I prefer to look at the future in terms of where things are going, because I see the solution for load shedding not coming from Eskom improving and maintenance happening correctly. I see it more from the private sector, which I represent, coming and actually solving the problem for the country and taking the responsibility away from the government and Eskom in terms of providing power to the nation.
By that, I would assume you're referring to solar, renewables, all the other alternatives we're told are the future. Government did announce when President Ramaphosa spoke to us, I think, in winter last year, for example, there'd be a lifting of the caps as to what IPPs could bring online, etc. But as things stand, for South African who's still sitting in the dark tonight, we're still in crisis mode. Why are those interventions not working fast enough? And how do we get them to speed up and not just be accessible to the middle class and upper class people, but to all South Africans?
Yeah, very good commentary. And I'd like to separate out renewables actually to large-scale renewables, so it's big solar farms and wind farms, and then small-scale renewables, which is what I represent, which is now a solar system on your house or your business to provide you power. Now, unfortunately, the large-scale renewable doesn't really provide power when we need it in the evenings, because it's not typically paired with batteries. It's just kind of the sun shines during the day, we have a reduction of load shedding in the middle of the day, and then the sun goes down, and if the wind's not blowing, we don't have power from those renewables in the evening, which leads to this load shedding that we're seeing. And we recently heard from Eskom that there was 4,400 megawatts of rooftop solar that was installed in the country, and that's typically paired with batteries. So that actually led to then 4 stages less load shedding in winter, and assisted with no load shedding at all. And from my side, the affordability thing, it typically in the past was only rich households that could afford a solar system and get it financed or pay for it up front. But now, Home Energy, we are offering a solar subscription, the cheapest in the market, where you can just subscribe like a DStv subscription to solar for your house. And interestingly, the subscription is then less than the actual price that you'll pay for electricity if you just stayed with Eskom. So we actually almost save you money by subscribing to our service. So that's a small-scale solution. And then there's also the bounce-back energy loan scheme that the government announced that's being rolled out to the banks that Home Energy can also assist with, in terms of a very low-interest loan that's given to people for their homes and businesses for a solar solution, so that Home Energy can help with both subscriptions and also with getting that asset-backed financing from the banks that the government is helping South Africa with.
And Matthew, Eskom has also been accused of being dishonest about the severity of the problem, at least when it comes to the grading. And by grading, I'm referring to the stages of these power cuts. We know traditionally 6,000 megawatts plus is what, well, 6,000 megawatts off the grid unavailable for whatever reason meant it was stage 6. But some analysts are saying, well, we've gone past 6,000, so by definition, we should actually be saying this is stage 7. Is that a deliberate attempt to mislead, or is there a technical reason for the classification at stage 6 still?
So yeah, that's very good commentary, and I wouldn't say it's deliberate misleading, because actually, fortunately, without us declaring officially that we're going to stage 7 or stage 8, even worse, we don't then go to the stage 7 or stage 8 hours of load shedding. We're still actually sticking to the stage 6 load shedding. So even though we are technically going into stage 7 at the last week, and then at some points we actually hit stage 8, according to the definition of anything above 7,000 megawatts that has been shared at stage 8, we don't actually have the hours of stage 8 being implemented, which is the key thing here. So it is a bit of PR from the government and from Eskom not wanting to declare officially that we're actually going to stage 7 and admitting defeat almost in that way. Unfortunately, I do see stage 8 coming within the next 6 months, so it'll happen at some point officially. But they're actually keeping us at the stage 6 hours, which is significant. They're not going past the hours of stage 6. So in terms of that, we are then officially still in stage 6, sticking to stage 6 hours, and haven't gone past that for now.
Thank you very much for that, Matthew Kruse. Good to speak to you.